on banners, in the streets, and through the cyberspace. People in China are speaking out. For a regime constantly flaunting its over 90% approval rate, what does dissent really look like in China? From angry flood victims smashing the walls of state buildings to a 7-year high in Chinese factory strikes, plus faith versus police, a standoff between residents and the police in a Chinese Muslim town. What does the apparent unrest signify for China's future? What do you think? Let us know below and subscribe if you haven't already. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Half a year without a paycheck. A banner held by dozens of workers on Wednesday bore the message in bold print. The workers were reportedly from a state-backed broadcasting network in a southern Chinese city. Now they're demanding what they've described as unpaid wages. According to previous reports, the TV station is a state-owned Chinese Communist Party enterprise that pays well and provides benefits. But as China's economy suffers from slowing economic growth, record youth unemployment, and a local debt crisis, wage hunting is becoming a trend across the country. Another recent demonstration took place in China's central Henan province. A video shared online shows hundreds of teachers staging a strike and a sit-in at the entrances of 2 local high schools. They were protesting against the school's failure to pay staff for several months. In another video, hundreds of retired teachers in northeast China gathered to support a mass petition. A report says their pensions had not yet been paid. Former Chinese journalist Zhao Lanjian has been closely following the recent incidents. He told Voice of America that no one acted aggressively, but noted the peaceful demonstrations are a forced expression under the current Chinese society. He explained Chinese authorities go on high alert whenever there's a hint of a crowd gathering. Armed forces are often mobilized to suppress the demonstrations. During China's 3-year pandemic lockdowns, Zhao described a kind of spiritual awakening among the Chinese public. He says it inspired people to openly criticize the country's leadership. Anger is bubbling over among a group of Chinese investors, and recent protests have erupted across the country over real estate issues. Tuesday in South China's Sichuan, house buyers marched in protest over their unfinished homes that they already paid for. Some reportedly faced beatings from police. Video captured one woman collapsed on the ground. The same day, along the East Coast in Zhejiang, victims of a similar issue were seen demonstrating in front of a local bank, demanding the institution return their money. That's after banking issues led a property developer to suspend construction on their homes due to lack of funding. China's capital, Beijing, later stepped in. On Monday, unidentified men were seen egging on protesters. Police officers on the scene paid him little attention. Comments online have drawn attention to the apparent organization of the incident, with a group of men in white shirts attacking protesters, with others holding up a tall signboard, possibly to block public view of the incident. Police troops were sent in as well, but largely stood on the sidelines. Later on, protesters that refused to leave were removed by the police. The demonstration was organized after China's biggest private trust company, Zhongrong International Trust, missed its payments date. A number of financial companies inside China are facing similar crises, with nearly 3/4 of their investments staked in the country's struggling real estate market. So far, the sum of missed payments has reached over $5.3 billion. Similar protests have broken out in other parts of China. China's blank paper movement topped the list last year as the country's most well-known protest. At the time, demonstrators broke out nationwide. With more uncertainty growing across the country, here's a closer look at what drove the striking events.
Protesters took direct aim at the ruling communist regime. The protests spread to Beijing and about a dozen other Chinese cities. The unrest came just a month after Xi Jinping secured a third term in power, the first Chinese leader since Mao Zedong to do so. It effectively allows him to rule for life. But public dissent against him is rising, spurred on by China's 3 years of draconian lockdown measures. Outside Shanghai, more calls for his resignation came from the southwestern city of Chengdu. And in China's capital, Beijing, crowds gathered to demand freedom. Police rode into big cities where protests broke out. Cruisers lined the streets in places like Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. Beijing quietly began rounding up people involved in the movement. International press freedom watchdog Reporters Without Borders, or RSF, revealed that over 100 demonstrators were detained in China. One of them was Li Xiqi, a graduate from Goldsmith University of London. Another was vigil participant Cao Zhixin.
当大家看到这段视频时，我已经被警察带走了，就像我的其他几位朋友一样。
Beijing authorities are quick to squash public displays of dissent that could undermine his rule.
Chinese citizens are getting more daring and speaking out against the Chinese regime's policies. That's after 3 years of lockdowns that trapped millions in their homes with limited access to food and health care. Amid the rising social anger, we'd like to look back on another round of protests. This February, Chinese authorities slashed health insurance benefits across several cities. Residents started reporting they could no longer afford their medications. A play on China's pandemic-era white paper revolution, the movement was dubbed the White Hair Revolution, owing to most protesters being retirees. Tens of thousands rallied in Wuhan and Dalian. Police were seen violently dispersing elderly protesters, in some cases hitting or kicking them and using pepper spray.
打是执法，你看看这什么声音？这是对老百姓吗？
拿我们纳税人的钱来镇压人民啊！
At least 5 were arrested in Wuhan. Shanghai residents joined the movement soon after. Videos showed crowds singing in the streets to a tune called The International. It features lyrics like "Arise, slaves suffering, hunger and cold. Arise, sufferers all over the world. My blood is boiling. I want to fight for the truth." Many protesters vowed to continue speaking out despite risks of detention. That's not all for recent social anger inside China. Another group staged similar rallies, pushing back against banks they say held their savings hostage. A group of protesters gathered on a bridge in China this July to speak out. Here's more.
These protesters are among the victims of a huge banking scandal. The incident triggered mass outrage in China, tied to millions of dollars worth of residents' life savings. The clashes broke out in China's central Zhengzhou last July. Hundreds of residents gathered because their life savings were at risk of vanishing after rural banks froze millions of dollars worth of their deposits starting in April. That money made up the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of customers. Protesters held banners and signs asking banks to return their life savings. Authorities stationed a heavy police presence at the scene. Officers tried to disperse the crowd.
If you do not leave and if you continue to disrupt society, the police will take stern action.
Footage shows a female protester getting dragged down steps. Another protester also beaten and dragged by security guards. A local bank customer told NTD that the money was all they had.
Some families have sick children and need the money to get surgery. Because they can't recover their money, some children already passed away. A lot of tragedies like this will happen. If we can't get our money back, we don't know how we'll survive.
Chinese authorities relented following the rare protest. In a statement, local authorities said they would start returning money to the bank's customers, and that payment would come in batches, though some protesters reported that they never got their money back.
A shocking statement from Britain's parliament. For the first time, an official document describes Taiwan as an independent country, crossing a major red line for diplomacy with Beijing. The phrase is featured in a report from the influential Foreign Affairs Committee under the House of Commons. It reads, Taiwan possesses all the qualifications for statehood, including a permanent population, a defined territory, government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. It is only lacking greater international recognition. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbing immediately criticized the document, while a spokesperson for Taiwan's foreign ministry thanked Parliament for its support. Driven by the UK report, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer was asked if Congress, or at least the U.S. Senate, should do the same and refer to Taiwan as an independent country. Here's his reply.
No, I think that the present situation is where we should stay.
The White House maintains its current Taiwan stance. President Joe Biden has repeatedly said the U.S. would defend Taiwan if China invades. Updates from a just concluded summit between the members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. As leaders of the member countries grow closer, ships from China and the Philippines are too. On Friday, Chinese vessels surrounded Philippine ships, getting within just a few dozen yards. That's in the disputed South China Sea. The confrontation happened near the Second Thomas Shoal, just 450 miles from the Philippines, but nearly 2,000 miles from China. Both nations claim the region as their own. The incident comes after another close call less than a month ago, when China fired water cannons at a Philippine boat. Defense ministers from Australia and the Philippines agreed Friday to meet annually to counter rising threats in the Indo-Pacific region. The two nations held joint drills last month. Another big story to look out for, an increasingly divided global landscape. How will the G20 summit play out this weekend in New Delhi? And how should Washington navigate the dynamics? An in-depth report on the event and more coming up Monday on China in Focus.
Beijing is facing its worst COVID outbreak.
Around 250 million people were infected during the first weeks of December.
China had reported only 37 deaths caused by COVID-19.
We urge China to be fully transparent about what's going on.
We do know that we don't know the cases right now.
The BBC has found evidence of a considerable COVID death toll in China's rural areas.
If you visit local crematoriums, there's a lot of people have died.
WHO still believes that deaths are heavily underreported from China.
The regime's prestige is based upon this idea that they are really good managers of everything that's going on in the country, and if the COVID numbers are not supporting that, well, one way to address that problem is to eliminate the COVID numbers, right?
Within 8 days, I lost 5 close relatives.
The
information that we got at the front end of this thing wasn't perfect and has led us now to a place where much of the challenge we face today.
It's very important for us to be on the same page.
That is what China has not allowed to happen.
If you cannot get real data from China, all your estimations will be way off.
My close relatives, among them, there are 4 died already. That is from one family.
We calculated how long each furnace burns, and then we came back to make an overall estimate, which is around 380 million.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 2 years. Here's what to look out for in our second half. China's economy is in big trouble. That's according to Miles Yu. He heads the China Center at the Hudson Institute and served as former advisor on China to U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. So what are the risks and the opportunities in China's troubled economy? American Thought Leaders host Yanya Kellick sat down with Miles Yu for details. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epic TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you soon.